Hello, everyone. Welcome to our EMG web chat. Today's topic will be when communications become leads and how you can be in an analytics-driven organization. My name is Kim Vermeer, and I am your moderator today. Let me introduce you to today's guests. We have Rikke Wivel and Jörg Stelzer. So, Jörg is part of the management team at Schwartz Public Relations, one of our partner companies in the Eurocom network. He is deputy head of agency and has more than 16 years of PR and communications experience in the B2B industries. Technology and enterprise IT, with a main focus on topics like digital transformation, disruptive tech, e-mobility, IoT, and more. Jörg, hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me and having me here.
Thanks for joining our session today. Okay. So we also have Rikke. Rikke is our CEO here at EMG. She brings with her over 20 years of experience in working in global communication, business strategy, and digital. This includes online lead generation. Hi, Rikke. One moment. There you go.
Hey, everyone. Good to be here. Welcome, Jörg.
Hi, Rikke.
All right, so now that I've introduced today's guests, we have a lot of topic areas to cover today, but I'm going to hand it over to Rikke to give us a quick intro.
Yeah, let me just frame the conversation. As late as yesterday, I had a conversation with a B2B company who was in the midst of a digital transformation. And the questions was, how do we accelerate this? And with those questions, we have now agencies that are trying to help B2B industries in getting all their marketing, communication, and PR efforts into a sales lead stream and helping our sales teams better reach out to their audiences. What have accelerated that is, of course, what has happened with the pandemic this year. A lot of trade shows that sales departments and sales leaders have been relying on for many years have stopped. So a big need has now come from figuring out how do we get our audiences and how do we start talking to our audiences online. And this is where communication and marketing and PR are able to help. It's just a question of how do you get it from the traditional way of doing things all the way through the funnel to a lead. And that's what we're going to discuss a little bit about today, and especially about the analytics and data behind it. So over to you, Kim.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so then let me start with one of the questions that many of our clients have asked here at EMG and also at Schwartz PR. What is the status of analytics and PR today? It used to be all about mentions, like you also mentioned, but now the focus is more on digital hits and metrics. So why the change, and is change a good thing? Shall we start with you, Jörg?
Yeah, maybe, and giving it just a little bit of background where we are standing at the moment from a PR and comms measurements perspective. I would say that we have doing the next step away from quantity measurement. What we see today is that quantity measurement, as we see systems in place by almost all of our clients that are able to measure things like a share of voice or a media value, they are in place. But overall, and from my perspective, these are, I mean, as I said, commodity today, but we have to ask a little bit more away from that kind of quantity and define where the quality comes in. So I think that has something to do with, let's say, also a little change in communications behavior overall, where we had that kind of more like going broad and figuring out or counting clips and figures, things like that. The last 10 years, companies, especially in very specific technology topics, came more and more to the point where they said, okay, would like to go away from this and approach our target groups more tailor-made. And yeah, to measure then the success of this means that we have to apply also other measurement KPIs and tools to see if that what we are doing is working in the end.
That's a very good point, Jörg. I also think when you do that, you really need to look at what decisions do we need to take within the company. You can measure a lot of things, and especially with digital, you get a lot of different pieces of the elephant, and you have to figure out what decisions do I need to take within the organization, and how do I get the best metric to actually take the best decision on that. So I think that's a part of it that companies sometimes forget, and agencies as well, because they say this is the metric we have, and then they think that that is the what they need to steer the business from. You have to go the other way around and look at what do we need, what decisions do we need to take in the business, and what metrics are available to help that. And that is a journey for a lot of companies, especially with the myriad and just the sheer volume of data they have from different parts.
Absolutely, fully agree with that. So coming to the discussion of quality KPIs, so and I fully agree with you, Rikke, that has to start within the organization and with asking the right questions. So first question is then for me, within the client, within the organization, how do you define success? You know, what is the objective to fulfill, and then try to find out the right KPIs and the right tools to help. And funny thing is, normally, if you have a look at, let's say, 80% of the RFPs, for example, that we receive, companies today do it the other way around. They ask the first question, the agency that they are just about to onboarding or to interview, which KPIs do you apply? Something like that. And I think that is quite a silly question, because I can then come up with a list and say, okay, listen here, I have these and this tools, I could do this and that. But first of all, I have to ask the question to the organization: what is the business objective that you like to fulfill and like to achieve with the things we do? And then, yeah, some kind of designing back that kind of system to measure that kind of success.
Rikke, I see you nodding.
Yes, I mean, it's what has been, the journey has been done in digital for a long time, and the consumer businesses are pretty far on it, but it is also a journey. Every company is in a different place in that journey. So some companies have big CRM systems in place where they can measure a lot of metric. Others have data lakes or massive analytics departments that can go through different data points and look at what effect did this action have on the business. But other companies are just starting. So you need to see, where is our company, what is our goals, and then you need to get the whole company together. What we're also seeing, and the company I spoke to yesterday had exactly that. They had done all the tech, all the backbone, but now came the time to actually look at marketing and communication and the sales department, and talking to these departments and saying, how do we then work together to figure out what's best for the business? And sometimes what I'm missing is as an agency, communication with sales on what do they actually need, what audiences do they need, and often that conversation either does not happen or it happens very late. So I can only encourage all companies that want to go in to make effective lead generation through communication, to get the different teams together and work together instead of sitting in different departments in a little bit of a silo approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important point you mentioned, Rikke, because as you said at the beginning, we are seeing that more and more communication activities going digital. That means for us as communicators, we have really a unique chance right now to measure somehow with the right tools and tactics the whole value chain of communications. How does a piece of information go through the organization? How does it reach the audience? So that's a chance that we never had before today. And of course we have, and that's why I'm referring to that kind of feedback channel that you mentioned. Of course we have the chance to adapt very quickly the things that we are doing. I mean, communications is a discipline that is really agile in, let's say, defining and changing messages. So in the end, you can do that just a minute before you enter an interview. You can redefine the things that you are saying or the message that you are giving. And that's something that I'm also think it's crazy, or that we don't see that often, that, for example, the salespeople or business developers are involved in that kind of reverse planning of comms activities and in that kind of feedback channel. And I would say from my perspective today as communicators, we have also a special opportunity to somehow redefine our roles of maybe being the kind of enablers of that kind of discussion within the organization, also of rethinking our role of how to feed that kind of value chain of communication. So 5 years ago, the biggest hit that you could have as an agency, I don't know, an article in one of the big business media, print. Okay, hooray, here we are. But I think that's not the objective we are talking about. We have to take the next step also with the client organization and think about what's next with that? What are we doing with that piece, feeding it in the right channels? And we have more channels than ever before that we have in our own hands that we can broaden the reach, and then of course test what happens, what resonates with the audience, and adapt. And so I would say from that perspective, with all the new quality perspective and aspects, with all the new digital channels, it's for me as a communicator, for us, it's a big chance to really redefine the value that we bring to a client's organization.
Yeah, no.
I couldn't agree more. The conversations that we have with clients today are so full of different ideas, different angles of how to reach the audience, because the fact of the matter is our audiences are not just one place. The B2B audience is very diverse. They are on LinkedIn, that's an obvious one, but we have found great audiences on other channels that you might not expect, and you need to understand where the different nerdish audiences is sometimes, and I honestly believe that it's time that communicators and PR people become a little bit more nerdish. I think we're nerdish when it comes to communication, but if we understand the technology and we understand our audiences, and I think that's one of our big strengths as communicators, and we understand the message, putting those together is really powerful, and that cannot be done by a company that only deals with the technology. You need the three components together in order to have an effective communication that can be driven through the funnel, so it can become a lead.
Yeah, fully agree. It's the same way I see it, because we have to be more that kind of technical nerds also by being able to talk with our clients how to connect that dots, because in the end what we like to do or have to do is we have to show what is our role in getting a business impact, in fulfilling a business objective. And as you said, there are a lot of also silos out there where we are measuring things. We in the communications department, as I said, with the classical KPIs. Then of course we have all the sales tools out there that are able to measure things like inbound requests, things like that. Then we have the web traffic, the web searches, maybe going up or down with things we do. So being able to, and also having a role as consultants in how to clever and smart connect these kind of dots and what to take for communications from that. That needs to be the nerdy part in our job today and in future, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting, Jörg. You've already touched a little bit on this earlier, but I would like to get some of the tactics and the mediums, because with the change in tactics and mediums, is everything actually also measurable? So are there things in a campaign, for example, that are impactful but not really measurable? So back over to you.
Of course, and that's why we are communicators and maybe not software developers. I'm sure that there are things in communications, and I hope that this will be also within the next, I don't know, 100 years. There are things that exist, but you can't necessarily measure. For example, I don't know if it comes to brand building, so really trust or commitment to a brand, or if it comes to human interactions, trust and love and things like that. We'll never be able to measure these kind of links in between organizations, human beings, things like that. But what I'm saying is, with a lot of these kind of interactions going digital, we come closer to the point where we really can say, for example, when does a mind change take part in a stakeholder's mind, for example, when do we see a shift from coming from one brand to the other? So we are coming closer to that kind of situation where we can measure not everything, hopefully not everything ever.
No, let me just add to that, especially when we are doing lead generation, when we are putting out different pieces of communication, being it a press release or a white paper. Gated content is very good for B2B, and it creates leads and it creates qualified leads. But at some point, there's a conversation with a salesperson. That's the great thing about B2B, that a lot of the sales are not done just through these first-time sales, not just done through a platform. It is done because you trust the person on the other side, whether or not it's the person you've seen actually live, but in these days often virtually. And that's the link. And it's hard to measure the success of that interaction. The ultimate is the sale. And the shout out to the great salespeople out there that are able to really gain that trust of the client, and bringing the leads to a happy client relationship. But that part is hard to measure. But you can figure out in the organization, for our organization, for our product group, for our industry, where is the best time in the journey for the future client or the lead to actually get a call from a salesperson, because that will change between one industry and another, or one product group and another. And so there's a lot on the journey that can't be measured, but we have to make intelligent guess based on all the different pieces of metric, and then we have to learn. It used to be we did campaigns, we did a campaign, it was successful, and then we waited, especially if you talk advertising. That's how a lot of consumer brands did it. Now you are seeing that it's layer on layer on layers. What I mean with that is that organizations do a layer of communication about where they stand on sustainability, a layer on communication where they stand on the technical part of their products, a layer of communication about the overall brand. And those layers hopefully build on each other and fit together, because they're all alive at the same time in this digital sphere. So you're seeing a change there too. And it is such online and in many things that in this case, 1 + 1 gives 3. So, the layering is a good thing. And then the salespeople hopefully will be able to take advantage of the work that was done in the big cyberspace.
Absolutely. And maybe to add one point, means also that like measuring that kind of activity becomes also a little bit more, let's say, complicated. So since we have a lot of more different channels, we have somehow to look after. And so we need, of course, systems, and also invest a little bit more in that kind of systems that are able to see that signals and bring together these different signals from different channels to get the right insights for the next process, and to optimize things that we are doing. That needs from all perspective needs, as I said, some more investment, not only from a, let's say, budget side, I think also from a readiness to change, also in communications and sales, because if you're talking about more capabilities to measure successes or to measure activities, that means also we have to be ready to learn also quickly then from the things that we see. And that's, I mean, it's the same with all kind of data projects out there. So the best real-time system doesn't help if you are not able within the agency to adapt to the things that you see. That's, I think, is also a crucial point.
If I can add to that, the learning is everything in digital, and because we can, but that also means we have to be ready to make mistakes. And actually, it's not as much mistakes as learnings. for every organization, for every communication channel. There are things that's going to work right away, things that are going to work over time. And those learnings have to be made, and we have to be ready to not just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, that didn't work. Sometimes you need a higher investment, sometimes you need higher frequency, and those are things you have to learn. I would also say that it's not as scary as it can sometimes. It's super complex, but it's not so scary. It's actually a question of just getting started. If you don't do anything, then nothing will happen. You actually have to get started as an organization and try some things and be okay with the things that are not working. Try some more, try some other things. And I think as the experience that agencies have and we have and Schwartz have is that we have tried some things that didn't work, and we're not going to try too many of those again. So at least you get a bigger learning done already by your agencies. So I think for us it's a question of trying things and trying them again and trying new things, but by all means do something.
Thank you, Rikke. This actually brings me to the last question of today, as we're also running out of time, but it's the key question. So this year, there's no denying a lot has changed. So sales teams, for example, haven't been able to go to conferences to follow up or to leverage the impact of that a PR might normally have in person. So when does communication or PR become leads?
Well, for me, it's a question of seeing the signals. We are seeing that companies are still doing PR. PR just suddenly got some different parts to it. So PR is also participating in webinars. PR also is having your salespeople out there talking as subject matter experts. And then it's as simple as for some salespeople to be able to see, oh, this person actually looked at my LinkedIn, maybe I should talk to them. That's the shortest way to a lead if you don't have big internal system. For me, the more sophisticated way, of course, is that to be able to measure through the funnel who have been interested, who has signed up maybe for web chat like we have today, or to get access to gated content. And we are seeing companies that now, especially here in the second wave that we experience in Europe, are going, hang on, maybe trade shows are not going to come back in Q1, or maybe they'll look differently, which we strongly believe they will. So we better start doing something else, because we cannot let our competitors take the space. And the space is now online, and it's with editors. So it's a very interesting time.
Absolutely, and maybe if I can add one point for me, Kim, you ask when does communications start to become lead? It starts for me if we stop just count clips or having a look at silly share of voices. It starts if we listen to the sales guys, to the business development, if we adopt to the needs of the audience, and if we are able to do that quickly. And then communications becomes leads, because we then directly do benefit into a sales cycle, for example, and help to fulfill business objectives. And that's the somehow easy but also hard answer to the question from my side.
Yeah, and if I can sum up for me on that, it is so crucial that that sales is part of this discussion. They know what resonates with their audience, and they know whether or not pieces of communication worked for them. And also, sometimes I'm surprised that salespeople sometimes are not aware of everything that's been sent out or has been used. So it goes both ways. That communication barrier, if that comes down during the first steps within a lead generation project, that would be a big step for any company, because it is probably the hardest step.
And to add to that, otherwise I would like to change over to the questions that the audience has left. But if you have anything to chat?
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay. All right. Okay, everyone. So let me just see what the audience has left. I have a question here. So some companies have invested already a lot in the change that you've been talking about, but what are the possible downfalls that happen if a company is slow to move forward? I know, Rikke, you already talked a little bit on this as well, but maybe elaborate a little bit more on what the possible downfalls could be.
Well, we have said it a couple of times. It's important to have everybody aligned. A lot of companies are somewhere in their transformation projects, and we have to remember, we think transformation projects change, or end, but often it's a many years that has to go on transformation. So for me, it is that the organization are willing to change, and it's really a mandate from the top. Then you need to have the silos broken down and work together and understand that it is a journey, and there are small steps to the journey, there are bigger steps to the journey. That is very important. And then, as I said, just try, do some things, see what works for you, and don't overcomplicate things. There's a lot of things that can be done fairly low tech and fairly well.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective, the biggest downfall is starting with the wrong steps. So that means not just run out and implement things that you maybe don't need in the end, but start, as I said at the beginning, start to ask the right questions. Start to ask what the business objective is, start what the KPI could look like that you like to measure, start having a look which kind of data, maybe which kind of tools you already have within the organization that you can use, and then have a look at the right tools. And these don't have to be necessarily the most expensive ones. How to get these dots connected and get the right insights for the further process. So don't start it with investing in big tools. Start with the right questions, I would say.
I thought that was very well said. That's exactly right. The right questions needs to start the journey, but the right questions also have to continue the journey. There's a lot of parts of a transformation process, and when you want to do lead generation, where you need to restart and relook at yourself and say, is it fulfilling the purposes? So for me, I completely agree with Jörg. And I would also just say, for all the communicators out there, it is always good to learn a little bit of a nerd talk so we can talk with the tech people. That's one of my advices.
Yeah. All right, thank you both. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I do want to ask Rikke and Jörg, both of you, if you just have any key final thoughts, key takeaways that you would still like to convey. Now is the time. Jörg, should I start with you?
Yeah, maybe. So I mentioned that before, but I think that's the key takeaway for me today. We are communicators. It's about relationship building. So we are talking a lot about metrics, measuring things, digital. Don't forget that we are human beings, that these relations, these trust among that, and that's what we are working for in the communications, is among human beings. And that not, as I said before, everything that is there, is existing, is measurable. And let's take it with that. And don't forget also in these kind of digital times, don't let us forget, talk to the people next to us. And
thank you.
Try to find out what they really need.
Exactly.
Yeah, for me, it's the opportunity. The opportunity is beautiful for communicators. A lot of us are sitting at home, as you can see, and we're spending a lot of time online. We're reading a lot. We're seeing a lot of video, and you know, some messages has to be done, and that's a great opportunity for communicator to make sure that we put quality messages out to the right audiences, and yeah, that opportunity is for me fantastic for any company, and especially in B2B with the specialized audiences.
Thank you so much, both. Okay, everyone, so if we couldn't get to your questions, don't worry, we will be answering those right after the chat to you directly. If you have any questions in the next few days, next few weeks, make sure that you follow Rikke and Jörg on LinkedIn, and you can always DM them and keep up to date with their latest posts. So, and also, like I mentioned at the beginning, we will be sharing a link so that you can watch this again and that you can share it as well. And with that said, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Rikke and Jörg, and have a nice, rest of the week, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.